I went to military training, but the problem is I forgot my gun. I didn't know what to do, so the sergeant handed me a stick and said, "You'll have to use this instead of a gun." Confused, I asked, "What? How can I use a stick instead of a gun?" The sergeant replied, "Just aim at the enemy and shout, 'Bangity bang bang,' and if they get too close, use it like a knife and say, 'Stabbity stab stab.'" I thought he was kidding, but to my surprise, when I aimed the stick at a trainee and shouted, "Bangity bang bang," they fell down like I actually hit them. And moments later, another trainee tried running past me, so I used the stick like a knife and shouted, "Stabbity stab stab," and he went down. And then I saw a trainee walking very slowly, so I took aim and shouted, "Bangity bang bang." However, this trainee didn't go down this time, and instead he started walking towards me slowly and dramatically. I started to panic, so I pretended to reload my stick, and I desperately shouted, "Bangity bang bang, stabbity stab stab," but nothing worked. And moments later, the other trainee knocked me onto the ground and shouted, "Tankity tank tank."
A man walks into a bar and says to the bartender, "4 drinks, please." The bartender asks, "Rough day?" The man replies, "Yeah, I just found out that my brother is gay." The bartender says, "Well, everyone has their own path." The next day, the man walks into the bar again and says, "4 drinks, please." The bartender asks, "Another rough day?" The man replies, "Yeah, I just found out that my oldest son is gay." The bartender says, "Well, that's his choice." On the 3rd day, the man walks into the bar again and says, "4 drinks, please." The bartender asks, "OMG, another rough day?" The man replies, "Yeah, I just found out that my youngest son is gay." The bartender says, "It's totally up to him who he is attracted to." The 4th day comes around, and the man walks into the bar again and says, "4 drinks, please." The bartender asks, "Doesn't anyone in your family like women?" The man replies, "Yeah, my wife."
My wife just came home, but the problem is she quickly put on a beautiful dress and prepared to leave. Confused, I asked her, "Honey, where are you going?" She looked confused by the question, and she replied, "I'm going to my friend's house. I wish I could bring you too, but she invited me only." I was really suspicious of her, so I went outside, got into a cab, and said, "Follow my wife's car, and I'll pay you $100. The driver agreed, and he started following her car. After a few minutes, the driver stopped his car at a nightclub and said, "Your wife parked here and got inside. What should I do?" I was shocked, and I said, "Go inside and get her out of there." The driver agreed and went into the nightclub. A few minutes later, I heard distant shouts, so I looked out the window and saw that he's dragging out a woman who's fighting all the way to the cab. The cab driver opened the door, throwed the girl inside, and said, "Hold that son of a bitch." I noticed that the girl he threw inside wasn't my wife, so I told him, "Who is she? That's not my wife." The driver looked extremely angry, and he said, "I know it's not your wife, it's my wife. I'm going back inside for yours." Little Jimmy was given an assignment by his teacher to write a simple essay about politics. At home, he asked his father, "Dad, what is politics?" The father thought for an easy and cute answer. He said, "Son, I make the money that our family uses, so think of me as capitalism. Since your mom decides on rules and manages our expenses, she is the government. Our beloved maid is the working class since she works for us. You are the people because you depend on us, and your baby brother is the future." At night, Jimmy is about to write what his dad told him, but suddenly he heard his brother crying. He rushed to check on him and discovered that he had soiled his diaper. So he went to his parents' room and saw his mom sleeping soundly. Then he went to the maid's room, but the door was locked. Curious, he peeked through the keyhole and saw his dad having a bedtime exercise with the maid. So Jimmy returned to his room. The next day at school, he submitted his essay, which reads, "The government is sound asleep, capitalism is taking advantage of the working class, the people are ignored, and the future is in trouble."
A father asks his son what he wants for his 15th birthday. "Dad, I want a single ping pong ball." Confused, his dad agrees. And on his 15th birthday, the son opens his present to find a single ping pong ball inside. The father enters his son's room, but doesn't find the ping pong ball anywhere. The next year rolls around and the father asks his son what he wants for his birthday. His son says, "Dad, I want a 10-pack of ping pong balls." The father was confused again, but he did as his son wished. And on his 16th birthday, the son opened his present to find a pack of ping pong balls. And the next day again, he goes to his son's room and doesn't find a ping pong ball anywhere. 12 months pass, and it's time for the son to turn 17. But a few days before his birthday, the son got hospitalized. The father is devastated. He goes into his son's hospital room and asks him what he wants for his birthday. His son says, "Dad, I want a boatload of ping pong balls." The father, just trying to make his son's days in the hospital enjoyable, buys a boatload of ping pong balls. "Dad, I can't believe you bought me these ping pong balls. How can I ever repay you?" "Well, there is one way, son." "What is it, Dad?" What do you do with all of these fucking ping pong balls? Well, Dad, he started, but never finished. The son died.
A woman once wanted to test if her husband really loved her or not. She decided to send him a text message saying she was tired of him and that she didn't want to live with him anymore. She knew it was childish, but she wanted to know how her husband felt. After sending the text, she hid herself under the bed. When the husband eventually came back home, he saw the text on his phone and read it. After a few moments of silence, he typed something on his phone. Then he started to get changed, whistling happy tunes and dancing. He seemed overjoyed. The woman was really shocked. The husband then grabbed his phone and dialed a number. "Hey babe," said the husband into the phone. "I'm just getting changed now. I'll join you in a bit." As for the other fool, she finally realized I was cheating on her. I didn't even like her at all. I'm glad she left. Now you and I can finally be together. He hung up and walked out of the room. After some time, the wife heard the front door close. Her husband was gone. She came out from under the bed and started crying, thinking about how her husband could do this to her. She then decided to at least look at her phone. Through her teary eyes, she read, "New message. I could see your feet under the bed, you idiot. I'm going out to buy pineapple juice." A man died and his dog lay down next to him and also died. The man's soul stands in front of a gold gate, and next to him is the soul of his dog. A mysterious man stands by the gold gate. The man who died asks, "What is this place?" The mysterious man says, "You died. This is heaven. Now you can enter and rest in peace finally." The man asked, "Is there water in heaven?" The mysterious man said, "Of course there is plenty of water. And is there food in heaven? You will get everything you want. But I have a dog with me." "I am sorry, sir. The dog can't enter," said the mysterious man. "The dog will have to stay here." The man refused to enter the golden gate. The man, together with his dog, kept walking. They see another gate in the distance with a man sitting by the gate. The man asked, "Sorry, what is behind this gate?" The mysterious man replied, "Heaven. And can I bring the dog with me?" "Of course," said the man. The man asked, "What was the other gate then?" "Hell. The only people who reach heaven are the ones who don't leave their friends." I was driving to work, but the problem is I saw an ad for a clinic that reads, "Get treatment for $20. If not cured, get $100 back." Thinking I could earn a free $100, I went to the clinic and said, "Doctor, I lost my sense of taste." The doctor said, "Nurse, bring medicine number 14 and put 3 drops in his mouth." After she put 3 drops in my mouth, I said, "Ugh, this is kerosene." The doctor replied, "Congrats, your sense of taste is restored. Give me $20. Furious, I went back a few days later and said, "Doctor, I have lost my memory." Once again, the doctor said, "Nurse, medicine number 14. Put 3 drops in his mouth." Annoyed, I said, "This is kerosene. You gave this to me last week." The doctor replied, "Congrats, you got your memory back. Give me $20. I was fuming in rage, and a few days later I came back and said, "Doctor, my eyesight is weak. I can't see at all." The doctor said, "Well, I don't have any medicine for that, so take this $100. I looked at the bill and said, "But this is a $20 bill, not $100. The doctor replied, "Congrats, your eyesight is restored. Give me $20. Little Johnny's mom visits his school one day. Problem is, she meets his teacher and asks, "So how's Johnny doing at school?" The teacher replies, "He is the dumbest kid in school. He scores the lowest in the class and is not interested in anything." His mother was so disappointed that she took little Johnny out of the school. 25 years later, the teacher got very sick and needed an operation. She had a low chance of surviving, but fortunately she survived. The teacher asked to see the doctor that operated her. Shortly after, the doctor came to see her, and she smiled. The teacher started to say something, but suddenly gasped, turned blue, opened her mouth like she was about to say something, and died. The doctor was trying to understand what just happened when he saw little Johnny, who was now a cleaner at the hospital, take out the plug for the oxygen machine. Angry, the doctor asked, "Are you crazy? Why on earth did you do that?" Little Johnny replied, "You see, patients were not sleeping well at the hospital, so I simply unplugged all the loud, annoying beeping things in their rooms. They sleep much better now."
A man was sick of being overweight and wanted to lose some fat. He calls a company and orders their 5-day, 5 pounds weight loss program. The next day, there's a knock on the door, and he sees a beautiful 19-year-old girl there with a sign around her neck that reads, "If you can catch me, you can have me." Without a second thought, he takes off after her. A few miles later, he finally gives up. The same girl shows up for the next 4 days. On the 5th day, he weighs himself and sees that he has lost 5 pounds. He calls the company and orders their 5-day, 10 pounds program. The next day, there's a knock at the door. When he opens it, he sees a really sexy woman with a sign around her neck that reads, "If you catch me, you can have me." He does his best to catch her, but couldn't do so. For the next 4 days, the same routine happens. On the 5th day, he has already lost 10 pounds. He calls the company again to order their 7-day 25 pounds program. "Are you sure this is our toughest program?" the representative asks. He replied, "Absolutely. Haven't felt this much better in years." The next day, there's a knock at the door, and when the guy opens it, he finds a huge, naked, muscular guy standing there with a sign around his neck that reads, "If I catch you, you are mine." He lost 33 pounds that week. I worked at a mental hospital for 2 years, and while I was there were these 2 patients who were inseparable. Their names were Emily and Dave. One day, when they were walking by the hospital swimming pool, Dave decided that he was going to jump into the deep, and then he sank to the bottom. Now, Emily jumped in the pool to save him, and she swam all the way to the bottom and picked him up. When the medical director found out about this, he ordered Emily to be discharged from the hospital immediately. He said, "Emily just did a heroic act. It shows that she is mentally stable." I went to Emily to tell her the news. As I went into her room, I was like, "I got good news and bad news for you. The good news is you're being discharged because you were able to save another patient's life." Then I said, "I hate to tell you this, but the bad news is Dave decided to hang himself in the bathroom with his bathrobe." I looked at her, and I was like, "I'm so sorry, but he's unalive." Emily looked at me in my eyes and said, "He didn't hang himself, silly. I put him up there to dry." On Halloween night, a young man makes a bold bet with his friends. He says, "I bet you all that I can convince any woman in the bar to kiss me." His friends, eager to see him fail, take him up on his bet and choose an attractive young woman sitting by herself in a costume. The young man confidently struts over to her, flashes his smile, and attempts to woo her with his charm. His charisma seems to have little effect on her, as she only pays him half-hearted attention. Nearly giving up, the young man finally says to her, "Okay, fine. If I can make your cheeks turn red without touching you, will you give me a kiss?" Intrigued, the stunning woman nods, grinning. The young man takes a deep breath and says, "You see those guys over there?" He points to his friends. "They bet me that I couldn't get you to kiss me." A blush immediately spreads across her face, and the woman starts laughing. With a wink, she quickly leans in to kiss the young man on the lips, leaving his friends surprised and him $100 richer. As he comes home, he finds out his sister has also just come back. "Where were you?" the young man asks. His sister replies, "Oh, I was just at the bar and I kissed a guy in a costume."
The little girl said to her mother,
"Mommy, when you were away at work for 3 days, a strange lady came around to visit Daddy."
The mom responded,
Is that so? Tell it to me again when your dad comes home.
They waited until the father arrived. The mother then asked,
Now, dear, what were you saying about Daddy and the strange lady?
The dad wanted to talk and explain, but the mother stopped him and said,
Quiet. I'll be talking to my lawyer in the morning.
Then the mom told her daughter to continue her story.
"Well,
Said the little girl.
Daddy told me to stay put in the living room while they went upstairs, but I followed them, and I saw them hugging and kissing. Then they went into your bedroom, and I quietly cracked the door open to see what was happening.
What did you see?
Asked the mom.
I saw them hop onto the bed."
The little girl continued.
And then what happened?
Asked the mom with an angry expression as she looked the way of her husband. The little girl continued.
"Then they did what you and Uncle Mike did."
I wanted some alone time with my wife, but the problem is my son was home. I usually get him a bowl of ice cream and tell him to eat it on the front porch, but recently he has started eating very quickly. He started eating so quickly that before I could even undress, he would finish and come back inside. So my wife came up with a new idea. She brought him to the front porch and said, Once you've finished your ice cream, I want you to survey the whole neighborhood and then report back on anything new. He agreed, and after finishing his ice cream, he looked around the neighborhood. Then after a few minutes, he walked to to his parents' window and yelled, "Mom, Dad, the Hendersons got a new car!" "Well done, son. Keep looking." A few more minutes pass by and he shouts, "Mom, Dad, the Smiths are planting flowers!" "Good job. Keep on looking." About 10 minutes later, my son ran back to the window and yelled, "Mom, Dad, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson are having sex!" I was shocked, and my wife quickly put a towel on, went to the window and asked, "Son, how do you know they're having sex?" "Because their son is sitting at the front porch with a bowl of ice cream, and he's also surveying the area."
A man had 3 girlfriends, but he didn't know which one to marry. So he decided to do a test to see which one was best suited to be his wife. He withdrew 15,000 euros from his bank, gave 5,000 euros to each and said, "Spend it as you like." The first went shopping, bought clothes, jewelry, went to the hairdresser, the beauty salon, and so on. Back to the man, she says, "I spent all your money to be more beautiful for you, to please you because I love you." The second one went shopping. She bought clothes for herself, a CD player, a flat-screen TV, 2 pairs of shoes, golf clubs, etc. Back to the man, she says, "I spend all your money to make you happy, to please you because I love you." The third took the money, invested it in the stock market, and in 3 days, she doubled her investment. She returned the 5,000 euros to the man and said, "I invested your money and earned mine. Now I can do whatever I want with my money, all because I love you." So the man thought and thought. Then he married the one with the biggest tits because he was indecisive.
Did your child ever hear you say a word that they now repeat? Poodle. My wife and I use the word poodle as a sort of safe word when we're discussing issues that might force one of us to lie, just to make the other happy. We stole it from a Chuck Palahniuk novel. It's a standalone question. Poodle or a confident statement? Poodle. Basically, it means I'm being completely truthful. For example, my wife might want me to accompany her to a dance costume expo in Atlanta on a Saturday morning. She really wants company because her dance teacher friend had to cancel at the last minute, so she asks me. I reluctantly agree. She asks, "Are you sure you're okay going to this dance costume expo?" I answer yes. She replies with poodle. Ugh. If I reply with poodle, it means I'm being completely truthful about wanting to go, but I'm not really. So it forces me to admit that I'd really just rather lie around in my jammies playing video games. When one person invokes poodle, you're not allowed to lie in response. It's a staunch rule that means it also has to be used sparingly. We have never explained this rule or our reasoning for the word poodle to our 3-year-old daughter. And yet one evening as we're cuddling on the couch, I squeeze my daughter and say, "I love you." She looks lovingly up at me and asks, "Poodle?" I smile, "Poodle."
Flight attendant didn't let the 87-year-old woman into business class, but when they learned who she was, they were shocked. Mrs. Wilson had never been on a plane before, and when she arrived at the airport, she felt overwhelmed and confused. She followed a group of passengers, assuming they knew where to go, which led her in the wrong direction. Fortunately, an airport employee helped her find the correct gate, just in time for her flight. Though Mrs. Wilson wore her best clothes, people mistook her for someone poor or homeless. At the boarding area, she felt nervous and was even avoided by other passengers. When she finally boarded and found her seat in business class, a man named Mr. Thompson, who was seated next to her, became visibly upset. He questioned why he had to sit next to her despite paying extra for business class. The flight attendant tried to calm him, showing that Mrs. Wilson had the same type of ticket. But Mr. Thompson insisted on being rude until he saw a photo of a young man fell from Mrs. Wilson's bag. Mr. Thompson picked the photo up and returned it to her, and Mrs. Wilson explained that the boy in the picture was her son, who was actually the pilot of their flight. This revelation caught everyone's attention, and she began to share her life story. Mrs. Wilson grew up in a poor family. Her father died during World War II, leaving her to help raise her siblings. She later met her fiancé, Jack, but both Jack and her mentally challenged brother died in a fire. Left homeless, she moved with her mother into a small shack. After giving birth to her son, Kevin, she was forced to put him in an orphanage to protect him from her mother, who had developed dementia. Years later, after her mother died, she tried to get Kevin back, but found out he had been adopted. She spent years searching for him and only recently discovered he was a pilot. Hearing her story, the pilot made an announcement, telling everyone that his mother was on board and that he loved her. The passengers applauded, and after landing, Mrs. Wilson reunited with her son, giving him the family heirloom she had kept for years. My wife is in the shower, but the problem is she hears 3 knocks at the front door. So she jumps out of the shower in a naked state and asks, "Who's there?" And a voice said, "It's your milkman, madam. Just leave those milk bottles outside the door," said my wife. After a few minutes, she again hears 3 knocks at the front door, and this time she didn't ask anything, put on her bathrobe and opened the door, and she saw her handsome neighbor Johnny standing in front of her. And he said to her, "Madam, we actually ran out of tomatoes." So, can you give me some? So my wife replied, yes, of course, sweetheart, I can give you some tomatoes. But first tell me, why were you acting as the milkman earlier? Oh, so you caught me, huh? Said Johnny. To which my wife replied, yes, I caught you because of that wonderful voice of yours and that knocking style. So why did you do it? To which he replied, actually, madam, I am in love with you from the moment I saw you the first time we shifted here. But since you are married, I and my wife kissed him before he even completes. And then she grabbed his hand and took him to the bedroom and said to him, I feel the same about you, and I love you even more. Let's do it before my husband comes. And after a few moments, I came home and said, I am home, honey, and I am starving. But she didn't reply. So I went upstairs and opened the bedroom door, and I saw Johnny on top of my wife having fun. Actually, I also have feelings for Johnny, so I said, hold on, I am coming too. And then I jumped on top of Johnny, and then all three of us have fun for 2 long hours, and it's been 2 years now. We are a very happy family of 3. A guy gets home early from work and hears strange noises coming from the bedroom. Suspicious, he rushes upstairs and puts his ears on door to see if someone has broken into the house. He hears a voice of a woman panting. Worried, he rushes inside to find his wife naked on the bed, sweating profusely and breathing heavily. The guy runs to his wife and asks, what happened, honey? Is everything all right? I am having a heart attack. I think I am going to die, cries the woman. Panicked, the guy rushes downstairs to grab the phone, but just as he's dialing, his 4-year-old son comes up and says, Daddy, Daddy, Uncle Ben's hiding in your closet and he's got no clothes on. The guy slams the phone down and storms upstairs into the bedroom, past his screaming wife, and rips open the wardrobe door. Sure enough, there is his brother, totally naked, cowering on the closet floor. You rotten bastard, yells the husband. My wife is having a heart attack and you are running around scaring the kids? The president was traveling in his car, and suddenly a thought came to his mind, filling him with excitement. The president said with a huge grin, Driver, today let's switch roles, where I will drive the car and you will sit in the back seat. Considering the safety of the president, the driver politely refused, looking worried. But the president was relentless and started threatening the driver with a stern expression. The driver had no other choice than to accept the president's order, and he said with a hint of fear, All right, Mr. President, as you wish. The president was ecstatic, beaming with joy, because his one-time dream of driving the car as a president was becoming a reality. The president started driving the car at full speed, breaking all traffic rules and laughing hysterically. Before long, a message reached the security office, reporting a man is violating all traffic rules and causing chaos, leaving the officials bewildered. Upon hearing this, the security chief called the city traffic police commissioner and asked him with a tone of urgency why they have not yet arrested the owner of the car. Commissioner said with a chuckle, Sir, I believe the man sitting in the car is a very powerful man because he has got the president as his driver. A teacher enters her class, but the problem is she sees little Johnny crying. She immediately asks, Johnny, what's wrong? Little Johnny wiped the tears off his face and said, Our house is very small, so me, my mom, and my dad sleep on the same bed. Every night my dad asks, Johnny, are you asleep? I say no, and he slaps my face and gives me a black eye. The teacher doesn't know what to say. She thinks for a while and then says, That's terrible. When your dad asks again, keep dead quiet and don't answer, okay? Johnny agrees, and the next morning he comes back with a severe black eye again. The teacher says, My God, why the black eye again? Little Johnny replied, My dad asked me if I was asleep, so I shut up and kept dead still. Then my mom and dad started moving at the same time, and mom was breathing erratically, kicking her legs up and screaming like an animal on the bed. Then my dad asked my mom, Are you coming? My mom said, Yes, I am. Are you coming too? And my dad answered, Yes, I am. Well, they don't usually go anywhere without me, so I said, Wait for me! I'm coming too! A teacher walks into a class, but the problem is it was her first day, and she didn't know that all the kids in her class were not as innocent as they look. She says to them with a big smile, Class, what's something you'd love to hold in your hands and never let go of? On hearing this, the whole class started laughing in a weird way. After a few seconds, Angela raises her hand and says, I would pick marshmallows, miss. They're so soft and squishy. That's adorable, my child, the teacher replies. But why only marshmallows? Why not something else? Little Angela smiled and said, Because, miss, I love squeezing them and then eating them very slowly. That's a perfect answer, the teacher says. Now sit down. Anyone else want to answer? After a minute of silence, little Johnny raises his hand and shouts, I choose coconuts, miss. Oh, that's a good choice, the teacher replies. But why coconuts, Johnny? On hearing this, Johnny smiled and replied, Because they're big, round, and I love cracking them open to drink what's inside. Wow, Johnny, very descriptive, the teacher says. Excellent work. Now sit down. Is there anyone else who would like to answer? This is the last time I am asking. Then finally, little Timmy, who's who's been grinning the whole time, raises his hand and says, "I would choose water balloons, miss." "Well, that's pretty interesting," the teacher replies. "But why water balloons?" On hearing this, Timmy replied, "If I tell you that reason, you will definitely kick me out of the class, miss." "No, I won't," the teacher says. "Just give me your answer." Then he asks, "Are you absolutely sure about this?" "Yes, Manny, come on," the teacher says. "Just give me your answer already." And then little Timmy stood up, went near his crushed Sarah's seat, pointed his finger at the water balloons and shouted, "Miss, because they feel so full and ready to burst any time. Get out of class, Timmy." A man wakes up in the hospital, bandaged from head to foot. The doctor comes in and says, I see you're awake now. Now, you probably won't remember, but you were in a big car crash. You're going to be okay. You'll walk again and everything. But something happened. Your Willie hurt badly in the crash and we were unable to fix it." The man groans. The doctor goes on, "You've got $9,000 in insurance money coming to you, and we have the technology now to make you a new Willie. That will work as well as your old one did. Better, in fact. But the thing is, it doesn't come cheap. It's $1,000 for each inch." The man perks up at this. So the doctor says, "It's for you to decide how many inches you want, but it's something you'd better discuss with your wife. I mean, if you had a smaller one before and you decide to go for a bigger one, she might be surprised. But if you had a bigger one before, and you decide only to get a smaller one this time, she might be disappointed." The man agrees to talk with his wife. The doctor comes back the next day. "So," says the doctor, "have you spoken with your wife?" "I have," says the man. "And has she helped you make a decision?" asks the doctor. "She has," says the man. "And what is it?" asks the doctor. "We're getting a new kitchen." A teacher told her students that whoever could name her a celebrity who said a famous quote would have no school on Friday. Teacher asks, "Okay, class, who can tell me who said, 'There is nothing to fear but fear itself'?" Sally excitedly shouts, "Franklin D. Roosevelt." Teacher says, "That's correct, Sally. You can have Friday off school." Sally responds, "No thanks, I'm Japanese and we value our education, so I'll be here tomorrow." Teacher tells, "Okay then, let's give someone else a chance. Can anyone tell me who said, 'Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country'?" Billy shouts out, "John F. Kennedy." Teacher, "That's right, Billy. Enjoy your Friday off." Billy said, "No thank you. I'm a Mexican, and we have a hard work ethic, and I'm committed to school, so I'll be here tomorrow." Teacher says, "Well, I guess no one wants tomorrow off. Let's continue with the next lesson." An angry Johnny in the back of the room mumbles, "Fucking foreigners." The teacher snaps around and asks, "Who said that?" Johnny jumps up and shouts, "Donald Trump. See you losers on Monday." One day, Susie asks her boyfriend Johnny to come over Friday night and have dinner with her parents. Since this is such a big event, Susie announces to Johnny that after dinner she would like to go out and make love for the first time. Johnny is very happy. He has never done this before, so he takes a trip to the pharmacist to get some condoms. The pharmacist helps Johnny for about an hour. He tells Johnny everything there is to know about condoms and sex. That night, Johnny shows up at Susie's parents' house and meets his girlfriend at the door. "Oh, I'm so excited for you to meet my parents. Come on in." Johnny goes inside and is taken to the dinner table where Susie's parents are seated. Johnny quickly offers to say grace and bows his head. A minute passes, and Johnny is still deep in prayer with his head down. 10 minutes pass, and still no movement from Johnny. Finally, after 20 minutes with his head down, Susie whispers to Johnny, "I had no idea you were this religious." Johnny turns and whispers back, "I had no idea your father was a pharmacist." Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed our video, hit the like button. Don't forget to follow us for more hilarious jokes. I went on a weekend trip with my friends, but the problem is, along with the four of us, one of my friend's girlfriend also came. She was so gorgeous that I kept staring at her beauty until a wild cock interrupted me. And since we went quite deep into the woods, we have to stay in a very small cabin with just one room and kitchen. So at night, when all five of us were having a bonfire outside the cabin, I said to my friend, who was with his girlfriend, "Hey Dave, look at me in the eyes." And then I slapped him hard as he was a little bit drunk. And then I said to him, "Listen to me very carefully. You must take your girl with you and make out with her out in the woods right now." "Right now? Here? Are you out of your mind?" he replied. To which I said, "Just trust me on this one, okay? If you do it right here, it will show how manly and brave you are." And just then, propose to her. I am completely sure she would say yes. On hearing all this, he started dancing from happiness, and just then I gave him a special kind of drink and said, "Drink it and be a man." So he drank it completely, and then took her girl out in the wild in a dark corner and said, "Darling, get ready for the best ride of your life. Ha ha ha. Tonight is going to be very special." And then they started doing it. But as soon as they began, my friend said, "Shit. Darling, hold on. I'll come in 5 minutes." Actually, it's my drink that was showing effect, and since I was watching everything from a corner there, I saw that she was on her knees, and then my magic wand got up. So without wasting any time, I quickly went there and started doing all the unfinished tasks, and as soon as I am done, she got up, turned around, and said, "I knew it was not my boyfriend. I should have been with you from the starting." And then she proposed to me, and I said, yes. And this Tuesday, with every God's blessings, we're getting married, and you all are invited. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed our video, hit the like button. Don't forget to follow us for more hilarious jokes. A husband takes his wife to play her first game of golf. His wife promptly hits her first shot and breaks the window of the most luxurious-looking house. So he and his wife walk up to the house and see the door open. A man sitting on the couch asks, "Are you the people who broke my window?" "Sorry about that," the husband replies. "No, actually, I want to thank you," the man says. "I'm a genie who was trapped for 1,000 years in that bottle. You've released me. I'm allowed to grant 3 wishes, and I'll give you each one wish and keep the last one for myself." The husband says, "I want $100 million a year for the rest of my life." The genie says, "Done. And now, young lady, what do you want?" "I want a house in every country in the world," she replies. "Consider it done," the genie replies. Then the couple asks, "What's your wish, genie?" "Well, since I've been trapped in that bottle, I haven't made love with a woman in 1,000 years, the genie replies. "My wish is to sleep with your wife." The husband looks at the wife and says, "Well, we did get a lot of money in all those houses, honey. I guess I don't care." So the genie and the woman go upstairs and make love for an hour. When they're done, the genie rolls over, looks at the wife, and asks, "How old are you and your husband?" "We're both 35, she replies. The genie smiles and says, 35 years old and you both still believe in genies?" 3 men, a philosopher, a mathematician, and an idiot, were driving when their car crashed into a tree. Suddenly, they found themselves standing in front of the gates of heaven, where St. Peter and the devil were waiting. "Gentlemen," the devil said, "heaven is too crowded, so St. Peter and I made a deal. If you can ask me a question I don't know the answer to, you can go to heaven. But if you can't, you'll have to come with me to hell." The philosopher stepped forward and said, "Give me a complete report on Socrates' ideas." The devil snapped his fingers and a huge stack of papers appeared. The philosopher read them and said, "This is correct." The devil said, "Then go to hell." With another snap of his fingers, the philosopher disappeared. Next, the mathematician asked, "Give me the most complicated math problem ever." The devil snapped his fingers again, and another huge stack of papers appeared. The mathematician read them and reluctantly agreed they were correct. The devil said, "Then go to hell." With another snap of his fingers, the mathematician disappeared too. Finally, the idiot stepped forward and said, "Bring me a chair." The devil brought him a chair. "Drill 7 holes in the seat," said the idiot. The devil did it. The idiot sat down, let out a loud fart, and asked, "Which hole did my fart come from?" The devil looked at the chair and said, "The 3rd hole from the right." "Wrong," said the idiot. "It's from my asshole." And the idiot went to heaven.
Babe, I want to see you without a makeup.
No, babe, I'm not gonna do this. You promised not to ask this question. We even have an agreement signed. Don't break the rule.
I'm just curious what you look like without makeup. Please, babe.
We have been together for 3 years. Why didn't you ask me this question? Why do you want to ask now, huh? Are you cheating on me?
Hey, stop the yapping. Send a selfie without makeup or else we're breaking up.
I would rather die.
Are you this ugly?
I'm not ugly. I'm very cute. I just don't want to break the rules.
But babe, we are about to get married, right?
Yeah?
So I can't marry you if I don't see you without makeup.
If you find a new girl, just say it.
No, babe, I love you.
Yeah, you love me, but you don't trust me.
Come on, babe. I even bought you a gift for our wedding.
What's the gift? You're very rich, so I expect you to buy me a very expensive gift.
Of course, baby. Here it is.
Oh my god, babe. That's such a stunning car. I love you, babe. When will we get married?
Nuh-uh.
What?
First, I want to see you without a makeup.
Okay, babe, but don't judge a book by its cover, okay?
Fine. What the flip? I thought you're born in China, but little did I know that you're made in China.
Babe, don't judge a book by its cover.
Shut up. Poor me loved a mannequin for 3 years. I'm suing you. You will spend the rest of your life in prison. What's your greatest regret? Googling my father one day when I was in my 40s. I always knew he was a horrible person. He hurt me and my mother every way you can think of. When I was a teenager, he was arrested after DNA evidence tied him to a string of young boys who were violated. It wasn't really a shock. The bright side was that he was sent to prison for 10 years. In that time, I moved both me and my mother to another state to make sure he was out of our lives. But one day, years later, I was curious and looked him up. I knew that he'd changed his name after he got out of prison because he'd written to me a few times trying to reconcile. I found an article that mentioned his new name, and my heart sunk. He'd married again and had a son who was a teenage champion basketball player. There was a picture of them together, celebrating him winning some scholarship. Seeing his hand on his son's shoulder made me sick. I found my half-brother on Facebook and contacted him telling him who I was and asked if he knew what kind of man our father was. He didn't seem to have any idea what I meant. I sent him the court documents and explained to him what he'd done to me and my mother. I just wanted him to know the truth so he could protect himself and his family. But 2 days later, I got a call from an unknown number. It was my father sobbing. He told me that his son had unalived himself. Apparently, he'd had a lot of mental health struggles, and finding out his father was a monster was the last straw. My father asked me if I was happy now that I'd ended the life of an innocent child. I don't know if it was my fault, but I wish I'd never looked him up.
I adopted my best friend. My best friend stuffed my little sister's muffins. I found out he was sleeping with her. I had just turned 19 and my best friend Mike was 17. I discovered what was happening through a photo he posted. As you can imagine, I was furious. My first thought was to beat his ass the next time I saw him at school. But then, a better idea hit me. Mike is an orphan. Both of his parents died in a terrible car crash a few years ago. So I started doing some research and found out that in my state, I could legally adopt someone who was 17 years old. I called his orphanage to see if I could adopt adopt him, and they said yes. I drove over to the orphanage, filled out all the legal paperwork, and officially adopted him. The next day at school, I handed him the paperwork and said, "I'm your daddy now." At first, he thought I was joking, but when he read through all the paperwork, he realized it was legit. The look on his face was priceless. As if that wasn't enough, the orphanage always takes pictures of newly adopted kids and posts them on Instagram. They took a picture of us and captioned it, "Eric and his new dad." The post quickly spread around school, and from that day on, he was known as Eric's son.
What's the funniest way a lie has ever backfired? When I was a kid, I faked being sick to skip school. It wasn't even for a good reason. I just didn't feel like taking a math test. I dragged myself into the kitchen, holding my stomach like I was on my deathbed. I said, "Mom, I don't feel good," and collapsed onto a chair for dramatic effect. She put her hand on my forehead, frowned, and said, "You do feel a little warm." Jackpot. But then she turned toward the TV. The morning news was on, talking about a new virus spreading. They mentioned symptoms like high fever, body aches, nausea. It was exactly what I had pretended to have. I saw her face change. Before I could even think about taking it back, she grabbed her phone and called my dad. "He's burning up. We need to take him in." 5 minutes later, I was in the back seat wrapped in a blanket. I tried to say I felt better, but my mom just shushed me. "Don't talk, save your strength." When we got to the hospital, everything escalated instantly. A nurse took one look at me and rushed me into a room. My mom kept telling them, "He's been sick since this morning. His fever is really high." I tried to explain, but they just nodded seriously. Within an hour, I had a thermometer shoved in my mouth, a nurse taking my blood pressure, a doctor asking if I'd traveled out of the country recently. I started freaking out. What if I actually convinced myself I was sick? Then came the blood work. 3 vials of blood and big needles. At that point, I wasn't faking anymore. I was genuinely panicking. My mom just patted my shoulder and said, "You're being so brave." After a full day of unnecessary tests, they finally let me go. That night, my dad walked into my room holding the discharge papers. He sighed, "Good news, you're perfectly healthy." Then he looked me dead in the eye and said, "Bad news, you're grounded for a month. I never fake sick again."
Have you ever fallen in love with someone twice? My girlfriend and I were out when a car going over the speed limit turned a sharp corner. She saw it heading straight at me and shoved me out of the way to take the hit. She flew 25 feet before hitting the ground and was rendered unconscious. Once we reached the hospital, the doctor told me to prepare for anything and sent her to the operating room for brain surgery. Those 16 hours were the hardest of my life. When the doctor finally came out, he told me she was alive and awake. The joy I felt was indescribable. I went to hug him, but he said he had something to tell me. She had lost her memory and couldn't remember anything. She wouldn't recognize me. I asked if I could still come in and say hi, and he said yes. I went to the bathroom, washed away my tears, fixed my hair, and went in. My hero looked so beautiful when I saw her. The first thing she told me in her dazed state was, "You're weird looking." She then tapped my nose, "But you're cute. I think I like you." She wasn't recognizing me though, so I decided to try my luck and kiss her. When I pecked her lips, her jaw literally dropped and her eyes went wide. "This cute guy kissed me," she yelled. I kissed her again, and her world exploded. "You're making me blush," she yelled again. I fell for her all over again at that moment, and I know she did too. It's sad she's no longer my girlfriend, but at least she's my fiancé.
My older sister, who hates our dog, suddenly wanted to take him for herself, and it shattered my heart. Growing up, I was the one who devoted my time to him. I walked him, fed him 2 to 3 times a day, bathed him, and took him to the vet. He was my best friend. In contrast, my sister would shove him away, call him dumb, and sometimes literally kick him out of her room. One of these kicks was so hard it resulted in the loss of the use of one of his back legs. And the one time our dog was left entirely in her care, she forgot to feed and walk him all day long. And to top it off, when we found the mess he made in the living room from not being walked, she blamed me for not training him better. But now, she's moving in with her boyfriend and wants to take our family dog with her so she can impress him by being a responsible pet owner. I was furious and heartbroken at the thought of losing him to someone who had never cared. We fought about it, but since she had used her money to buy him, he was technically hers. Our parents backed her up and she dragged him out of the house. I felt my world shatter as she took my best friend away. Without my dog, the house felt empty. I knew I had to get him back. I went to my sister's new house 2 days later and I couldn't believe the awful sight. There he was, tied to a rope outside looking frail and defeated. My heart broke for him. I hopped the fence, untied the rope, and told him to follow me. He did at first when suddenly he stopped. He proceeded to poop all over my sister's lawn. I laughed hard before scooping him up and taking him back home.
What did someone do?
Meal you were ever served at a friend's house, as either a child or an adult. 1. I was invited to the home of a distant cousin for dinner. He and his wife were always snobs. No matter what you did, they would try to one-up you. If you painted a room blue, she would walk in and say something like, "Oh, blue," in a condescending tone. It didn't matter what it was, they always had a put down. I took my new girlfriend over with me for dinner. When we were called to dinner, I said, "Oh, smells good. What are we having?" The wife looked down her nose at me and said, "Poindexter's." We are, of course, having Poindexter's, as if there was nothing else in the world as good. My girlfriend had gone to the bathroom and hadn't heard this. She returned, sat at the table, and said, "Oh, Poindexter's, yummy. They used to feed us these at summer camp." This was basically saying that Poindexter's were cheap enough to feed 500 kids. My cousin's wife was appalled and said, "Oh, these are East Coast Poindexter's, as if the ones from the East were better." My girlfriend replied, "Oh, I know. We used to catch them in Newfoundland and sell them to the dog food factory." 2. I used to have a friend who thought I was overweight. She was super skinny and an exercise nut. Personally, I thought she looked awful. Her skin was stretched tight over her bones, and she didn't look healthy. She constantly sent me information about health problems caused by being overweight. Yes, I could have stood to lose some weight, but I ate a healthy diet, was active, and had no health issues. Once, she invited me to lunch. She made lemon mint ice water, which was really good, so I thought, cool, she made a nice lunch. She bustled around the kitchen and finally brought out a dessert-sized plate with 3 little pizza roll-type things. I can't remember what they're called, but they're about 2 inches long and an inch wide, and a small salad made of lettuce, a tomato slice, and some shredded carrots with creamy dressing. I ate it, of course, because I'm not rude, but the pizza things were salty, as was the dressing. All the while, she lectured me on portion control. I smiled and nodded while eating my tiny, unhealthy meal. That was the last time I saw her. She continued to send lecturing emails and articles about losing weight. I finally blocked her. I'd bet good money that, even with my extra 10 or 15 pounds, my low-salt, low-fat, veggie-heavy diet has kept me far healthier than her tiny portions of unhealthy food lifestyle. 3. When I was about 8, I was invited to a friend's house for dinner. I was told we were having meatloaf, vegetables, and mashed potatoes. I had the meatloaf and veggies, but then I was given a whole cooked potato, some milk, and butter. I watched my friend mash her potato, then mix in milk and butter. I did the same, but that's not what I thought mashed potatoes were. 4. I come from a very small, extremely Caucasian town. If you saw someone who looked black, Asian, or Polynesian, they were undoubtedly a student at our small college. The town did have one African American family and one refugee family from Laos. The Laotian girl was in my high school class. I was always friendly to her, so she invited me to her birthday party. She invited several classmates, but only I and one other person showed up. She was excited to see us, and her family was very hospitable, though only the girl spoke English. The party had cake, but it also had wonderful, strange food I had never seen before, stir-fried vegetables, tangy spices, and delicious mysterious noodles. But what fascinated me most was the sticky rice. They served us big globs of it to eat with our hands. I still remember it to this day, as I've never seen sticky rice since. I don't know if it's just a Laotian thing, but it was amazing. 5. This wasn't exactly weird, but it was unexpected and extremely disappointing. As a child, I made friends with an American girl who lived nearby. After a few weeks of playing together, her mother called mine and asked if I'd like to join Millie for lunch one day. I was thrilled, picturing something like my usual lunches, fried fish and rice, pork chops and mash, or barbecued chicken wings. Maybe something exotic, since they were American. Imagine my disappointment when lunch turned out to be a plate of jam sandwiches and a glass of Ribena. Not even a whole sandwich, just 2 slices placed together and cut into quarters. We each got 2 quarters. Lunch. They called that lunch. I had never been so deceived in my life. What's your best example of to do right? You sometimes have to do a little wrong. When my daughter was a senior in college, she had this psycho ex-boyfriend who blackmailed her, saying he'll leak her private photos unless she sleeps with him one last time. Sadly, she gave in and went to his house, where he kept her and did everything he wanted until morning. I remember she was distraught the next day and even walked funny, and I still blame myself for not pressing harder when she said it was fine. As I'm sure you can guess, it turned out that sleeping with him once was not enough for this psycho. He began demanding it weekly, or else he'd leak her photos. I don't know exactly how many times she gave in, but I do remember seeing her get sadder and sadder over a few months. God, I blame myself so much. Thankfully, she finally got the courage to speak up. She told 3 of her older male cousins, and they promised to deal with it. A few days later, she invited the a-hole over to our place to stay the night. My wife and I were on a trip abroad at the time, so he thought the house was empty. From what my nephews told me, he walked in carrying a bag filled with knives and other disgusting stuff. They all hid upstairs waiting for him, and my daughter seduced that freak. She took him into her room where she dropped him onto the bed, and that's when my nephews came out of the ensuite. I won't go into the details because they're way too graphic. But he is now blind, deaf, and paralyzed. My daughter actually left the room, she couldn't watch anymore, and my nephews told me that they originally wanted to unalive him, but decided to leave him in such a bad state that dying would have been better.
When have you said, "That's not my name, I have a girl's name"? Even though both men and women have been named Shannon throughout history, in recent years, it's been used more for girls than boys. I was teased a lot as a kid for having a girl's name, but eventually, people grew up, and that was that. Still, I knew it would come up again at some point. In my senior year of high school, I had a jerk of a teacher for economics class. It was the last half of my final semester, and I was ready to be done. On the first day, the teacher was calling attendance. He liked to call students Mr. or Miss, so when he got to my name, he said Miss. I sat in the back of class, said here, and he corrected himself saying, "Oh, it's Mr." The class laughed and we moved on. I figured it was a one-time mistake. The next day, he called my name again, Miss O'Neill. I rolled my eyes, raised my hand, and said, "Here." Nobody laughed this time. The first time was a mistake, but now it was on purpose, and everyone knew it. Day 3, again, Miss O'Neill. I just sat quietly. He stared at me, calling it again. The class turned to watch. His face turned red as he clenched his teeth. He was annoyed that I wasn't reacting. Finally, he snapped, saying, "You're going to answer me, or you're going to the office." I simply shrugged and said, "Sure, let's tell them you've been calling me Miss O'Neill for 3 days just to be funny." He looked down, sighed, and said, "Mr. O'Neill?" I smiled and answered, "Here."
Would I be the asshole for ruining my best friend's life after what he did to my sister? I had a best friend, Ryan, since high school. We did everything together, video games, road trips, late night talks. He was like a brother to me. But now, I can't believe I ever trusted him. I have a younger sister, Lily. She's kind, trusting, and always saw the good in people, including Ryan. I never thought I had to worry about him. A few weeks ago, I threw a party at my place. Lily was drinking a little, but she wasn't drunk. She was just having fun. I wasn't paying too much attention until I realized she was missing. I started looking for her and found her in my guest room. She was half conscious, clearly uncomfortable, and Ryan was there, too close, touching her. her. I snapped. I pulled him away from her and told him to leave. He acted like it was no big deal, saying she was into it and could have said no, but Lily looked scared. The next day I confronted him again, and he laughed. He actually laughed. I recorded everything, every word. Then I posted it online, everywhere. I wanted people to know who he really was. The fallout was huge. His girlfriend dumped him, he lost his job, most of our friends cut him off, but then people started saying I went too far. Even my parents said I should have handled it privately instead of ruining his life. Have you ever made a split-second decision in a panic that made things worse? My family went on a trip, and because I have 5 younger siblings, we needed 2 hotel rooms. I was sharing a room with 2 of my younger siblings, while my parents and the rest of my family were in the other room. Around 3 a.m., I was still on my phone when I heard people arguing in the hallway outside our door. It was hard to tell what was happening, but I got up to call the front desk. That's when it hit me. Suddenly, my eyes and nose were burning really badly. There was no smell, just pain. I quickly woke up my siblings and told them we needed to run to the emergency exit for fresh air. But halfway there, I had a terrifying thought. What if my parents and other siblings were still asleep in their room? I didn't know what the chemical was, and I was scared it could kill them before they even woke up. So I ran back and pounded on their door as hard as I could. Then I ran back to the emergency exit. I waited outside, struggling to breathe, but I started panicking again because my family wasn't coming out. It turns out they were already awake and had heard the argument in the hallway. When I banged on their door, they thought I was the attacker, so they stayed inside, scared, for almost a full minute before escaping. Now I feel terrible. My 3-year-old sister was shaking so much and didn't understand what was happening. I think I made everything worse by panicking and banging on the door. If I had just kept running, maybe they would have escaped sooner. We believe it was bear spray, a really strong kind of pepper spray, so thankfully, there won't be any permanent damage. But at the time, it was pure agony. I can't stop feeling guilty. I wish I had known the chemical wasn't deadly. I just wanted to make sure my family was safe, but I feel like I only made things worse. Teachers. Who's the worst parent you've ever met? At our high school, we had a student who was notoriously known for his helicopter mom. I had heard nightmare stories about her before, and at the start of the year, I saw he was enrolled in my class. I sat there thinking, how bad can she possibly be? Turns out I spoke too soon, as that same night, I got a group email to all of his teachers. It was a list of her expectations she had for us. Here are some of them. We must hand back all assignments within 48 hours, must be ready to cancel anything, and be available 24/7 for drop-in appointments with her, and it is our duty to make sure he gets perfect grades. She came storming into my class a few weeks into the school year, demanding to know why he got a B on his assignment. I showed her the answers he got wrong, and she threatened to sue me if I didn't change it. That same year, we heard an older teacher yell, "What the hell is wrong with you?" from down the hall. All of us peeked our heads out to see them arguing. She had came in unannounced to demand he change her son's grade, and we knew this teacher wasn't going to take shit from her. When he turned her down, she even tried to flirt with him, resorting to offering him special favors if he changed his grade all the way from a 60 to a 95. She was forced to leave the school that day by our security and was banned from ever coming back.
What's the specific thing the love of your life did that you'll remember on your deathbed? When we were dating, my husband Jake had a stutter and didn't speak Spanish, which made things tough with my family. He already had difficulty speaking English, so learning Spanish seemed impossible. My parents were polite, but my dad especially never fully approved because he couldn't speak directly to him. My abuela would speak to him, and he'd look at me for translation. It wasn't a deal breaker, but a barrier, and both he and my family were frustrated by it. Before the wedding, he started acting strange. He looked drained and distracted, like something was eating at him. Some nights, I'd wake up and find him at the kitchen table, whispering to himself with his laptop open. If I asked, he'd sigh and say he was stuck late at work. He said it so often I started to doubt him, and I knew he was hiding something. This caused issues between us leading up to the wedding. However, one day, he returned to his usual self, had a bright glow on his face, and everything seemed great up to our big day. At our wedding reception, he stood up to give a speech. I was nervous for him because he never liked public speaking because of his stutter. But to my surprise, he spoke for 2 minutes without a single issue, and his family and I were almost in tears. However, that wasn't the biggest surprise. Then, he didn't say anything and just nodded. Jake explained that he saw a professional stutter and Spanish teacher all those late nights. He turned to me and said, "I did this for you." My high school classmate spread a rumor that almost ruined my life, so I exposed a truth that actually ruined hers. When I was in high school, this girl Haley made my life a living hell. She would shove me in the hall, knock my books down, and tell nasty things about me to anyone who would listen. She told people I was sleeping with teachers for better grades and more attention. I got weird stares and cruel messages. Even teachers treated me differently. I remember going to my principal about it, but he just called it high school drama and told me not to bother him again. But the final straw was when she spread the worst lie yet. I had missed a few days of school because of the flu, but Haley ensured everyone knew I was out for something else. Morning sickness. She said I was pregnant by one of the teachers and too ashamed to come to class. It spread like wildfire. Suddenly I became a laughingstock, and even my friends started acting weird around me. That's when I decided I had had enough. Haley had a secret, and she didn't know I knew it. She had a boyfriend who was 23 and she was 17. I didn't want to be responsible for sending someone to jail, but I couldn't take it anymore. I had proof from a mutual friend, screenshots of their messages, pictures of them together, even one of her bragging about sneaking into his dorm. I anonymously sent it to the school, her parents, and most importantly, the police. The next week, her boyfriend was arrested. Haley wouldn't say a word to anyone when she returned to school, and now crazy rumors have spread about what happened to her. I transferred schools a week later and never looked back. Single parents. What's your best dating story? I told Pete that I have a 6-year-old daughter when we were on our first date. He said he hated kids, so I knew this wasn't going to be a serious relationship. So Pete and I enjoyed just fooling around for a while on nights my daughter was at her dad's. But weeks became months and months became a year, and I realized I was really falling for him. I really hated that I was catching feelings because I knew there wasn't a future if he didn't like kids. I decided I was going to have to end things with him, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. One night we were hanging out at my place and my ex came by unexpectedly with my daughter. She'd had a nightmare at his house and wanted me. I was trying to keep my daughter from really noticing Pete. I didn't want her bonding with someone who was just going to drop out of her life, but of course she was immediately curious about the new person. And before I could really do anything, Pete crouched down and said, "Hey Molly, I'm Pete. Want to see a magic trick?" And then he did a few simple tricks for her, pulling coins out from behind her ear and stuff like that. She was delighted and I was stunned. He was clearly so good with kids. After my ex was gone and I got Molly in bed, I asked Pete when he learned magic. He said, "A few months ago. I figured if I was going to be with a woman with a kid, I should learn a thing or two about making them laugh." I had no idea he'd been taking our relationship that seriously for that long. It's 2 years later now, and I'm pretty sure Pete and Molly like each other more than either of them likes me.
Ever had a barista treat you like trash, then be super nice to someone else? My best friend Jake and I stopped by a new coffee shop downtown. It wasn't busy, just a couple of people working on laptops, but we still had to wait several minutes before anyone even looked our way. When the barista finally approached, he barely glanced at us. "What do you want?" he muttered, tapping his fingers impatiently on the counter. Jake and I exchanged glances, but we placed our orders anyway. No greeting, no smile, just a sigh as he turned away. A few minutes later, our drinks arrived, both completely wrong. Jake politely pointed it out, and instead of apologizing, the barista rolled his eyes and snatched the cups away like we were an inconvenience. As we waited again, I noticed him whispering to a coworker, smirking in our direction. Then clear as day, I heard him say, "Ugh, broke college kids never tip anyway." It stung, hard. Jake and I were probably the youngest people in the cafe, and I realized that was the only reason he thought he could treat us like that. I clenched my jaw. Okay, let's see how far this goes. A few minutes later, a well-dressed businessman walked in. The barista practically lit up like a Christmas tree. "Good morning, sir. What can I get for you?" He beamed, even making small talk while taking the man's order. Jake raised an eyebrow. "Wow, didn't know coffee came with a personality upgrade." When we finished our drinks, I walked up to the tip jar, pulled out a few bills from my wallet, and placed them back in my pocket. The barista looked up, confused. "Hey, was there something wrong?" he asked, suddenly interested. I smiled. "Oh no, your service was exactly what you thought we deserved." His face went pale. Jake smirked as we walked out. I've never felt more justified in making a point.
Former military, what obscure regulation saved you from certain punishment? I was stationed at an artillery base in Oklahoma, and we had this first sergeant. Everyone called him First Sergeant Rulebook because he memorized every obscure regulation just to bust people's chops. One Saturday, I'm headed off base in civilian clothes when my car breaks down. I call for a tow, but it'll be hours, so I start walking back. It's pouring rain, I'm soaking wet, and who pulls up beside me but First Sergeant Rulebook himself. He rolls down his window with this smug grin and says, "Private, you know it's against regulations to be off base in civilian attire without your military ID. I'd left mine in my broken down car. I'm thinking I'm toast. Weekend passes revoked. Extra duty for a month." But then I remember this bizarre paragraph from a briefing about uniform standards. I stand at attention in the rain and recite, "First Sergeant AR 6701 states personnel experiencing emergency vehicle failure may return to base by foot without complete documentation, provided they report to their chain of command within 4 hours." His face went from smug to completely shocked. He just stared at me for what felt like forever, then muttered, "Get in," and drove me back to base in complete silence. Later I found out that regulation was actually about uniform exemptions during vehicle emergencies, not IDs at all, but he respected the confidence so much he never looked it up.
There were 3 troublemakers in a class. They were so bad that teachers kept quitting. The principal got so frustrated, he hired a retired female Marine sergeant to teach the class and gave her authority to do whatever it took to control the 3 kids. On the first day, she walks into the classroom and asks the 3 to step forward. She slapped the first kid and knocked him back 4 feet. She told him to use a sentence with the word evidently in it. The boy said, "Evidently you've heard about us?" "Excellent," said the teacher. She went to the second boy and punched in the face. Again, she told the boy to use a sentence with the word evidently in it. The boy said, "Evidently you want us to behave?" "Excellent," said the teacher. She then went to the third boy and kicked him in the ass, lifting him off the floor, and he flew across the room. Once again, she told the boy to use a sentence with the word evidently in it. The boy said, "Teacher, can I ask a question first?" "Yes," said the teacher. The boy asked, "Are farts lumpy?" "No," replied the teacher. The boy said, "Evidently, you just kicked the shit out of me."
One day, my teacher announced to the class that we were going to play Kahoot. I threw my bag of chips in the air and screamed because I was so excited. I knew I was going to win. Everyone else looked at me like I was crazy, but they all knew I had never lost a game before. The game started, and of course, I was the first to join. My username, KahootKing235. Most people joined, but some didn't even bother because they knew I was unbeatable. There were 15 questions, and I was dominating until I saw the leaderboard. Someone with the username, "You're gonna lose Sophie89, was right behind me. Suddenly, the whole class was cheering for them, hoping I'd finally lose. I was like, oh heck no, that's not happening. But then, disaster disaster struck. I got the 10th question wrong, and you're gonna lose Sophie 8-9. Got it right, taking first place while I dropped to second. I fought hard for the rest of the game, but when the winners were announced, I was in second place. Second place. Meanwhile, the new champion stood there like they just won an Olympic gold medal. Turns out, it was Becky. Becky. Everyone was laughing at me, so I did what any reasonable person would do. I let out the most powerful, earth-shaking, reality-bending fart of all time. It was so intense that the fire alarms went off and the school had to evacuate. In the end, everyone apologized for laughing at me, but plot twist, I had to go to the doctor because apparently my butt had third-degree burns.
How far would you go for your dog? This woman offered me $5,000 for my golden retriever Max at the dog park because he looked just like her old dog. I said no. She kept pushing and showed me photos. They looked almost the same. At first I felt sorry for her. You could see how much she missed her dog Sarah, who died from cancer. Max has been my world since I adopted him after my divorce. He's the reason I get up each morning. But when she begged me again, part of me wanted to help her heal. Then it got strange. Her silver Honda started showing up near my apartment every day. She began appearing at my regular coffee shop, just watching us from outside the window. Even the barista noticed. She'd sit there for hours staring at Max. One day at the beach, there she was again, sitting in her car with binoculars. My hands were shaking as I took a picture of her license plate. This wasn't grief anymore. This was something else. Then Max began acting different. He's always been a cheerful dog, friendly with everyone, but now he started acting nervous when we left the apartment. He'd whine and keep looking behind us during walks, like he felt something wrong. Dogs sense when their owners are stressed, and I was falling apart. She began leaving notes on my windshield. Please reconsider. Max belongs with me. One note had photos of toys she bought for him. Another listed my work hours, down to the minute. She'd been watching me closely. The notes got worse. Sarah would want Max to be happy. That line stuck with me. I began doubting myself. Was I being selfish? Then she left dog treats at my door. Always Max's favorite brand. I wasn't sleeping. Every small sound made me jump. I installed a security camera after seeing muddy footprints on my mat. The footage showed her standing at my door at 3 a.m., just staring for 20 minutes. Then my neighbor told me something. Mrs. Rodriguez said the woman had asked her about me, my schedule, if I lived alone, if Max seemed unhappy. That's when I knew this wasn't grief. She was trying to prove I wasn't a good owner. I called the police. The officer said I should be kind, that losing a pet is like losing family. I wanted to yell. I'd lost pets too, but this wasn't about loss. This was obsession. I started changing my routine, but she always found us. Sometimes I saw her taking pictures of Max. I felt like I was being hunted. The breaking point came soon. A 3-page letter showed up under my door. She said her dog Sarah came to her in a dream, that Max was Sarah, reborn. She believed Max was her old dog's soul in a new body. Then, on Friday night, everything changed. I woke up at 2 a.m. Max was barking like crazy at the front door, growling like I'd never seen before. My heart raced. I looked through the peephole. She was there, bent over my lock, whispering, "Come here, baby. Mommy's here to take you home." I called 911. She was still trying keys, one after another. I whispered that someone was trying to break into my place, to steal my dog. It sounded insane, but it was real. She was trying to unlock my door. When police came, they found a bag of keys in her car. She had been making copies, hoping one would work. They also found dog treats, a leash with Sarah engraved on the tag, and a fake service dog vest. She had a full plan to take Max and say he was hers. She confessed everything. She believed Max was her reincarnated dog. She thought I had stolen him from his real life. She said she just needed to get him back so he'd remember her. She'd planned this for weeks. At the restraining order hearing, she offered the judge $10,000 to make me give her Max. Now Max won't go near the front door anymore. Did I do the right thing, or should I have just taken the money? I let my girlfriend's family mock me in Japanese during dinner and surprised them with just one sentence. I'd been dating Yuki for about 6 months. When she finally invited me to Sunday dinner with her family, I was nervous. This girl meant a lot to me, and I knew her family's opinion really mattered. "Just a heads up," she said, gripping the steering wheel. "They're protective, and they usually speak Japanese at home, so if they seem distant, don't take it personally." I nodded, trying to play it cool, but she didn't know that Japanese was actually my first language. I'm half Japanese on my mom's side, but I got every Irish gene from my dad. Pale skin, light eyes, brown hair. Most people just assume I'm white, and honestly, I've let them. The moment we walked into the Tanaka house, it felt warm and welcoming. The smell of homemade food filled the air. Multiple relatives were chatting. Yuki's mom greeted me with a bow and a formal smile. "Nice to meet you," she said carefully in English. "The pleasure's mine, Mrs. Tanaka," I said politely, but then I caught it. As I turned toward her dad, I heard Keiko, Yuki's aunt, whisper something in Japanese. "Kono gaijin wa nagaku tsuzukanai yone." This foreigner won't last long. All right then, game on. For the next hour, I smiled and stayed quiet while they served me passive-aggressive remarks. They used English when talking to me, but switched to Japanese when talking about me, clearly thinking I couldn't understand. "Look at this foreigner," her grandmother said while passing the rice. "He looks so pale and weak. He can't even hold chopsticks properly," her uncle muttered. "No manners. He's not even trying to learn our customs," Keiko said while pouring tea. "So rude. He's probably making fun of our culture," another aunt added. Every comment felt like a jab, but I just kept smiling and stayed silent. Yuki kept trying to include me in the conversation, switching between English and Japanese, but I could tell she was frustrated. Everyone else kept talking around me like I wasn't even there. Then her father leaned toward Yuki's brother and said, "Kore ga daigaku ni iku to musume ga tsurete kuru gaijin da." This is what happens when daughters go to university. They bring home foreigners who'll never understand us. "Yuki wa hontou ni baka da ne," her brother replied. Yuki is really being stupid. That one hit hard. I could handle the insults toward me, but calling Yuki dumb for loving me? That crossed a line. Just then, Yuki's 8-year-old niece ran in, crying with a scraped knee. "Oji-san itai," she sobbed. "I fell and there's blood." I stood up, gently picked her up, and softly said in fluent Japanese, "Daijubu, daijubu, misete, taihen janai yo, kirei ni shiyu." It's okay, let me see. It's not serious. Let's clean it up." The entire room froze. Chopsticks stopped midair. Everyone stared at me in total silence. I carried her to the kitchen, still speaking gently in Japanese, helping her calm down. When I came back, every eye was locked on me. Her father stared. "Itsu kara nihongo hanaseru no," since when when do you speak Japanese? I looked at him calmly. Umareta Tokikara. Since I was born. Keiko turned pale. You understood everything? I nodded, then switched to perfect Japanese. I heard all of it, that I look weak, that I can't use chopsticks, that I'm mocking your culture. But the thing that hurt the most was hearing you call Yuki stupid for choosing me. The room was dead silent. My name is Jacob Yamoto. My mom is Michiko Yamoto from Kyoto. I was raised speaking both languages. And yes, I know real Japanese culture. Yuki's grandmother stood.